Three simple rules brought these two together. Not really, but they govern their lives. You're listening to The Bearded Theologians, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about The Bearded Theologians, you can go online at www.beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to The Bearded Theologians, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week we have another special guest on with us, and this is Rob. He has a great new book out that he's going to share a little bit of information about his book. And so, Rob, tell us about your book.
Yeah. So I'm Rob. I am a Methodist pastor in the Desert Southwest Annual Conference. Recently moved to Tucson. My wife is also ordained clergy, and she got a new appointment. And I'm an elder, but I'm transitioning to deacon, and that's for a whole nother podcast. But as you said, today I'm here to talk about my book. This is it. It's called The Sacred Secular, and I co-wrote it with Dottie Escobedo-Frank, who's written some other books. She's also a pastor here in the Desert Southwest Conference and kind of a big mentor to a lot of us. I don't think I can call myself young clergy anymore, but younger, still kind of youngish clergy. I don't know. That definition changes all the time. But the idea for the book came about, it was a few years ago, so this was a long time in the making. We were having coffee, just kind of catching up. At the time, I was starting a new United Methodist Church in downtown Phoenix with a co-pastor, Reverend Brian Kemp Schlemmer, who's also a good friend of mine. We started that church kind of based off of the urban village model in Chicago. We saw a new thing happening in downtown. We saw the urban revitalization starting to sprout up, and thought, man, we needed a new faith community down there. So I'd been doing that for a little bit, and one thing I had noticed was there were a lot of really great people, a lot of millennials who were coming to downtown and to Central Phoenix, to the urban core. And there was a lot of great restaurants and coffee shops and pop-up parks and festivals and block parties, just this amazing sense of community. And there was church, but a lot of the new folks weren't going to church. There were a lot of our historic urban churches, and they were being attended and dwindling, but the folks who were attending were people who were driving in from the suburbs, and they weren't really reaching the immediate community, and they kind of didn't know what to do with this new thing that was happening in downtown. And quickly what I realized in talking to a lot of folks who were moving into downtown Phoenix were, religion really wasn't an important thing for them, but spirituality was. But they felt like, or it seemed like, they were finding it, and they were finding that community that we usually say, you need church for community, you need church to find meaning, you need church to explore spirituality. But they seem to be having no problem doing that through basically urban living. That's them now. They're calling to tell you. So I noticed this. I picked up on this in conversation and in observation, and I ended up applying for something called Ignite Phoenix, which is where they have like 20 people come up and give like five-minute talks, and you get to show 20 slides based on your talk. And at the end of 5 minutes, they cut you off no matter what, so you have to really rehearse. But I got selected for that. My talk was why being spiritual may be better than being religious. And I talked about all the ways in which sort of the new urbanism was fulfilling the religious and spiritual and communal needs of our generation. And how the church, which was supposed to be doing all these things, was kind of lagging in this place. But then I also talked about churches that I thought were responding well to this, or were fitting in well with today's culture. So I just talked about this with Dottie, and she also shared that, she'd been noticing a shift in the culture. She'd I think, gone walking through a mall one day, like an outdoor mall in Phoenix, and noticed there was a big drum circle going on. And to her, it looked like worship, and she could tell that the people were having a religious experience. And she said, I've always kind of wanted to write about that phenomenon. And I said, hey, look, I got this idea. You got this idea. You've published before. How about we write something together? And she thought that was a great idea. And we wrote it up and we pitched it, and it got accepted. So then began the journey of actually writing the darn thing. But throughout the book, we go through some different things. I talk a lot about urbanism, about how millennials especially are connecting to the city, about the importance of neighborhoods, about gentrification, and about churches' roles in how churches' role in a neighborhood and how they respond when new people are coming in and people who've been living there for generations are getting pushed out. And I think churches have a responsibility in making sure that doesn't happen in destructive ways, or doesn't happen at all. Dottie talks about coffee shops, about finding spirituality in nature. And we also talk about content. So one of the big things I've always noticed in recent years is my sermon usually can't stack up with the latest great TED Talk, or it can't stack up with the quality of Breaking Bad. And not just because those are good, entertaining things, but because in a way those things are sermons. Those things have important things to teach us about God and religion and spirituality, even if they're not talking about Jesus or saying any of those words directly. I just saw the premiere of this season's Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain. You guys watch that, Jim?
Haven't seen it yet.
All right, I'm off. I'm out.
Sorry, I just
one of the greatest shows on TV. First episode, he was in Vietnam, and he goes through these countries and he does a lot of cool stuff and he tries a lot of food. But the entire episode was put together in a way where it was sort of this commentary on war and on violence and on how we can and it is possible to find peace and forgiveness and reconciliation. And I'm like, holy crap, that's like the best sermon I've heard in a long time. And it was this compelling, interesting, engaging piece of content. And so I think there's just so much else going on in the world where the church used to fulfill these needs and these desires and these duties that culture is just picking up on and doing a much greater job at it. So,
well, and you highlight that in your book when you talk about the bar church stuff.
Yes.
Having met you and Jerry both, I know what it's like to be with you all and to experience that kind of community. And I can see where you make that connection with the two and how important that is. And so, you want to reflect a little bit about that and that experience.
Yeah. So when I was living in Phoenix up until a few months ago, we lived in a neighborhood that was just a couple blocks from a number of restaurants and bars and coffee shops. And those places kind of became like our dining room tables. And maybe not necessarily the bars with the kids, but some of the restaurants and the coffee shops certainly became like family to us. But sometimes I'd meet up with neighbors at the bar, like after the kids went to sleep or something, and found out more about my neighbors and developed tighter relationships with my neighbors, and ended up doing kind of the pastor thing while sitting at a bar with complete strangers more often than not. Having more vulnerable conversations in a place like that, then, not that I hadn't had those in church or in church offices or in church buildings, but they were happening in a dive bar and with people who never were going to step inside a church, or hadn't in a long time. I think, when we talk about bars and we talk about church and doing religious things in them, there's a fine line there. And I think people, worry about, what are their ethical boundaries we're crossing, or is there a danger to hosting church things where there's alcohol, or whatnot. I think there can be, but there isn't, as long as we're responsible about it, and we know boundaries and we pay attention to those boundaries. But there are just all these places in the world that people go and they feel safe and they feel like they can connect to their neighbors. And why can't the church be there too? Or why can't that be church?
Do you think this shift has come in the last, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 years, where the church used to be the center of the neighborhood, used to be the center of the community? In the community, our culture has passed us by on that, and it's now becoming, these places, whether it's in an urban setting or even rural settings, have the coffee shops and things where people kind of congregate. Do you think it's a matter of, the church has just been stuck, and people have met us where we are for so long, and now we need to go and begin to meet people where they are, take the church to them instead of expecting them to come to church?
Yeah, I think a big issue is we sort of lost our why. Like, why do we do church? Why are we pastors? Why do we need to be in relationship with people? In the good old days, quote unquote, 50s and 60s, you built a church in a new suburb, and people showed up because that's what you did. And you went to church, and the pastor's job was to be a good administrator and to provide decent sermons. And, by the way, that was there's a fire hose of content now, of high quality content that we can choose and pick from, and still fill our entire day listening to great podcasts, great TED Talks, great TV shows, great movies, great books, great articles, and still just be scratching the surface of that. And the sermon is just one little part of that. But back then, the sermon was that was a big thing I think people waited for each week, and was a big part of how people shaped their morals and ethics and values and theology. So now, as the world is sort of passing the church by, we still sit in our church buildings blaming everybody else for not coming back. If they would just understand that they need us, and that's our why. Our why is because people have to do this, because we're self-important. Well, if we remembered our why is to make disciples, is to transform the world, is to change people's lives, is to be in ministry with the least, the lost, and the last, all those things Jesus talked about, and it could be one of anything of what Jesus talked about. Jesus gives us a lot of whys, but Jesus knew his why, he owned it, and he lived it every day, and he wasn't ashamed of it. And I think if we were truly passionate about why we are the church and what we're supposed to be doing as the church, what God's calling us to do, then it wouldn't matter where ministry happens, whether that's in the church building or out in the neighborhood or in the bar, or even creating something great in a virtual format online. We don't necessarily have to be, I think, generalists anymore. There's a lot going on in the world, and a lot God is calling us to be a part of, and we're hanging out in our offices.
No, that's good. I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We've gone on this mentality of, the field of dreams. If we build it, they'll come. Mm-hmm. And we're building things, and they're not coming. And so now we got to transition into that. We got to go where people are, and whether that's the bar or the park or the coffee shop, we got to get there. And our offices have become really comfortable and really easy, like you say. What advice might you have for I'm in a pretty rural part of New Mexico. I know Frank's is in no man's land and in Oklahoma.
We have a Walmart.
So we don't have these urban settings, but we do. So what advice might you have for us folk out in these areas that might be helpful?
Well, so I think a big piece of urbanism is that it's really a philosophy around a better way of living, and there's a huge sustainability component there, and that's why I think millennials are really attracted to urbanist principles, because it's about how do we find a better way to live together, but also a better way to improve people's lives, to maximize well-being and to maximize the well-being of the earth. So to me, I hypothesize that those principles apply. Urbanism is one way to do that, and that's why it's so popular, because millennials are really idealistic and want to make a difference and want to make their lives better, but also make the lives of others better and care very much about the environment. I think those principles translate to the suburbs and to rural settings as well. And it comes back down to the why, like, who are you? Why do you do this? And, what's the thing you can do better than anyone else to improve lives and to make the world better? I mean, that's Christianity. It's like, it's not new. We've just forgotten that. This should be where we're like excelling. Because this is Jesus's thing.
Right.
Said, well, the church doesn't seem to be doing that, so we're going to go ahead and do it over here.
Well, and that's what happens with, as I've kind of just spent a lot of time studying all the reformations that have happened, they're answering that why and what's going on that needs to change. And I think, especially in the church today, we're there, but we just don't have the language for it, because we're so afraid of where that will take us, and not necessarily, doesn't mean that it means that the pastor's no longer in his office, but he's down at the coffee shop or, at the feed store helping out and getting engaged in the community, where it used to be the model was pastor sits in his office, waits for someone to come in, because that's how disciples are made. And, my firm belief is that disciples are made through relationships and people seeing how you live out the gospel, and they want that in their lives and ask you how. And it's funny, as you were talking about the why, I kept thinking of the TED Talk, the Simon Sinek TED Talk. Yeah. Why? I mean, that's just like, if you haven't checked that one out, I encourage you all to do that. It's a great deal on that. Rob, if you ever attend a sacred secular workshop, hint, or request one, hint, that's that part of that TED Talk will be shown. Yeah. And I was just thinking, so Rob, I know one of the other things you do is you're also jumping into the podcasting thing. You want to tell us a little bit about the podcast that you're a part of? Yeah. So I don't know if folks know that I'm one of the founders of UMC Lead. It was actually just started. It was called Relevance Lead, which was started out of the Desert Southwest Annual Conference as sort of like a tag on to our annual young adult event. We had seen a lot of people coming from out of conference to check out our event because it had a lot of guitars and flashy lights, and it was in Las Vegas. So people were coming to do quote unquote research on this young adult event. And I started seeing all my friends show up to like, why are you at my young adult event? And I said, that doesn't matter. You're here. That's cool. And we decided, let's do a pre-conference. Let's do a TED Talk-esque sort of thing. Nobody was quite starting to copy that yet. It's all over the place now. Now everybody has their TED Talk kind of a leadership event. I like to say we're one of the first. I'm sure we weren't. But you're pretty close.
And around the same time, Justin Halbersma, who's pastor in Minnesota, had started the Rethink Bishop blog, which was a place for people to go post sort of provocative things. It was called Rethink Bishop because he had done a post where he said, what if we elected a 35-year-old bishop? And it was just a giant thought experiment that was supposed to generate conversation and big thinking. But as our institution does, people freaked out and just called him an idiot because how dare he, insult the office of bishop by suggesting somebody under the age of 55 might get elected. So anyway, there were a lot of contributors to that who are also coming to Lead. And over the years, the Desert Southwest Young Adult event kind of fell away, but we kept Lead going, and it sort of became a thing. And we decided, let's combine the conference and the Rethink Bishop blog, and let's just call it UMC Lead. So that blog we had a lot of content pushing through it, and then it's gone. It's had ups and downs, but the conference has kept going, and we're currently gathering new contributors for the blog. We were hacked last year, and the site went down for quite a while. We just rebuilt it and relaunched it. And one of the things we want to do is talk to the people who've presented over the years at Lead, have them recap their talk, and then tell us, well, what do you think of that now? You gave us this idea 4 years ago. What's happened since then? How has your thoughts changed about that? What's changed in your life and where you are? So it's really, I think that those are just kind of prompts for us to get to know some people we may not otherwise know in the United Methodist world. There's so many great, creative, interesting people out there who don't necessarily have a platform. They don't have book deals, or they don't have time to write a book or whatever. And what we really try to do at Lead through the conference, through being able to, just about anybody can contribute to the blog, unless your name's Matt Franks. And then the podcast, just offering another way to highlight those voices and to really continue and generate conversation in the United Methodist Church, because I think the conversation we hear about and we see a lot is the polarized ones. And anytime something has to be newsworthy to end up, on a national Methodist news outlet, which is fine, and that's what they're supposed to do. But with the internet and with all these outlets, I feel like we can make this a national, if not worldwide, conversation. We have some serious decisions that are going to be made, and these panels and task force and stuff are, and leadership groups and whatever, those are needed. But I think so often they get caught in echo chambers. We all do. And can we further the conversation by adding more voices to the mix, asking more questions?
Rob, we thank you for all that you've done for the kingdom of God, but we also would encourage everybody to pick up his book. Rob, do you have I only have the digital copy and it doesn't show very well. Could you show your book again?
Yep.
There you go.
It is.
Yeah. They designed a really cool cover.
It is a really cool cover.
It is cool.
Look, it's a cross.
Wow.
Look what you did.
You can find that on.
And it was Brian McLaren and Elaine Heath said really nice things about it.
Awesome.
So, yeah, nice. They're probably the only two people who've said nice things about it. I've deleted all the other negative reviews.
There you go. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why we want to provide, our whole deal with this blog is to provide a space for people that are want to share what they do. And we've had many people on. That's one of the reasons why I want to get you on. It's like, oh man, we got to get him on. And through our connection through Lead, having been with you all, at least attending with you all for the last few years, I've enjoyed what you've done with Lead and what you do. And you do some awesome work. And so I just thank you for giving your time, being with us today. And, Zach, do you have anything?
No, I just want to thanks for coming on, Rob. Sharing your book, sharing your passion for ministry and for people. Like Matt said, what we want to do is create space for people to have the conversation and to take this home with them, to do something in their church and their community, wherever they are, just to go out and meet people. So thanks for the encouragement and a pretty good model of how to do that. And so that's what we want to do. We want to have all of you that are listening have the conversation with us, have it in your homes, in your restaurants, and in the bar, and in your church. You can further that conversation with us on Facebook and the Twitters and the Instagrams. And so we want to invite you all to do that. Check us out on beardedtheologians.com. We have super awesome mugs. We have baby
mugs?
onesies.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, man, we have mugs.
How do I get a mug?
Just go to the website and click on the buy things, and we've got all sorts of things from mugs to baby onesies. I've actually been using them as gifts to our families that are having babies.
Right.
Can I trade? Can I trade you a book for a mug?
Absolutely.
We can make that work.
We could do that.
Yes.
Definitely make that work. What's really fun is Christmas is coming up. And so for all of you out there, go and buy some Bearded Theologians Christmas gifts. They make awesome stocking stuffers.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so
really
glad I discovered you guys.
Really shameless over here.
Yeah. You got to own it. Own your why.
That's right. Own our why. And
don't be embarrassed by it.
Well, and our tagline is, whatever this is, we've got it. So
That's right. It's really vague. So it keeps us to be able to do what we want to do.
So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold.
And we'll catch you next time on whatever it is we see you on.
Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Our pastor, not pastor this week is the Reverend Hannah Bonner. She's doing awesome work in Houston, Texas. But she's also done some stuff with us on our page and through our podcast. But we appreciate the work that Hannah is doing in the kingdom. And so, Hannah, this week you're our pastor, not our pastor. And we salute you for Pastor Appreciation Month. So
keep up the good work.
Thank you for joining us for the Bearded Theologians podcast. If you'd like to find out more about us, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com or check us out on Facebook at Bearded Theologians or on Twitter and Instagram. We're glad that you joined us for our conversation, and we hope that you continue it on. Thank you and have a blessed day.